much anticipated speech by US President Donald Trump at the World Economic Forum in Davos captured global headlines. Just days before the forum began, Trump on social media threatened to tariff goods from 8 European nations and NATO members until they supported a US deal to purchase Greenland, which is an autonomous territory of the Kingdom of Denmark. During his speech at WEF, Donald Trump ruled out using military force to annex Greenland, but called for immediate negotiations to acquire the Arctic land. Instead, the US president told world leaders at the World Economic Forum at Davos that a US acquisition of Greenland would strengthen the NATO alliance. The US president is also dropping plans to add a 10% tariff to goods from 8 European countries over the opposition to his push to acquire Greenland. Joining us on the show to review highlights of Davos meeting and Trump's speech is Professor Femi Otubanjo, a research professor at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Good morning, Professor Otubanjo, and you're most welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, Dr. Abatia and Vivian. Nice to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us, sir. Well, President Trump spent over 1 hour yesterday attacking multilateralism, attacking McCartney and Macron, and also somehow he seems to have walked back on his threats of tariffs and military attack on Greenland, and now talking about a framework deal, the details of which nobody knows yet. So do you see this as the spirit of dialogue, which is the theme of Davos this year, triumphing, working out, and Trump becoming a bit sober, knowing that Europe, which he describes as frail, is determined to fight back?
Thank you very much, Dr. Abati. My impression of Trump when he was making that speech yesterday was that he was suffering from what you might call location disorientation or spatial confusion. He probably did not know where he was.
Prof,
that speech.
You have a functional visa before your visa is withdrawn. Those agencies are very strong.
I don't care. I don't go. I'm very comfortable in Nigeria. I don't need to go anywhere. Here was a man addressing an audience at Davos. Davos is a symbol of global multilateralism. And here he was preaching American exceptionalism. He thought he was speaking to a MAGA audience. That's why I talked about spatial confusion. Because if you listen to the rambling speech, some part of it, he allowed himself to use the teleprompter. But for the most part, he was on his own. The usual, what you hear when he goes on campaign with his favorite audience. The speech lacked grace, it lacked wit, it lacked quality. The kind of things that you expect from an American president was not there. You will notice that all through the speech, there was no laughter. There was no applause. And even when he finished, the applause was just there, with just politeness. So most of the speech was devoted to abuse. I mean, Biden, a former president of the United States, was mentioned 7 times in the first 5 minutes of the speech. Sleepy Biden, stupid Biden. There was so much abuse of people. People buying windmill for China are stupid, and so on. And then there was so much bombast about about what he had done. There was that display of narcissism and megalomania. I did this. Trump has turned himself into a king. I did this. I built the United States Army. I told them. So he has turned America into paradise. The speech was not appropriate for that place. It was a declaration of what we might call Pax Americana. America is the ruler of the world. Without America, no economy will survive. Look at the example of Switzerland that he gave. He said he talked to the president was very rude and so on, and he now changed the tariff from 30 to 39. That he could put 70%, and Switzerland would be ruined. Everybody loves America. America is the place that runs the world. This was the kind of thing that we were listening to. A rambling, lacking quality. The language was poor. It was the pedestrian language that he uses to address his mega audience. And of course, on Finland, there was a display of ignorance, absolute ignorance. How can you say you want to negotiate about Greenland? Greenland is part of Denmark. Denmark is a member of NATO. So there's no problem about defense. There's a collective defense agreement in the NATO treaty. That is the Washington Treaty of 1949.
Article 5.
An attack on one will be an attack on all.
Article 5.
So how can you not? Article 5, yes, Article 5 of NATO treaty, or the Washington Treaty as they call it. What is so? If Greenland is already a member of NATO through Denmark, what is the point about talking about defending it from Russia and China? It's already defended by the NATO treaty. So this is a president who does not read, who does not listen. That was on display here. So if you want to, what he's saying, that we are the hegemon, we are the superpower of the world, you have to deal with us. So he has thrown out multilateralism, international laws, and so on. This is a man who has forgotten that America, the founding fathers of the UN, the presidents of the world during the Second World War had a multilateral view of the world, a world in which we will all be a global community. The Marshall Plan and NATO itself were two sides of a commitment to build a world and save it from communism. NATO, Marshall Plan they were plans to secure America, more of a plan of American security. If you allow European countries to fall to the Soviet Union. Don't forget, at the time NATO was formed, the Soviet Union had not demobilized. They were still there in Europe, in Eastern Europe, with millions of troops. And they had the advantage of overrunning Europe. The communist ideology was gaining ground because of poverty and desolation and destruction of European economy. So the Americans needed to save Europe for self. So now he's forgotten that. He has no sense of history. He has no sense of global humanity and so on. And therefore, there is a man, an empty man, speaking to a very enlightened audience. It was only in the last part of his speech, when he returns to the teleprompter, that he remembered that he was speaking to some of the best managers of the economies of the world. It just stopped short of abusing Macron and other leaders, but he kept abusing his Federal Reserve chairman. Stupid, calling everybody stupid. That's not a speech by an American president. The American decision-making has collapsed because Trump has taken over.
All right, sir. Professor Otubanjo, obviously, clearly, you're not a fan of President Donald Trump. But that aside, I think it wasn't such a shock because we are getting used to his style of speeches. And so we sort of expected that this was how it was going to play out. But the details of it. Number one of the things we had said in the introduction was that he had said that the US's acquisition of Greenland would strengthen the NATO alliance. Do you agree with him? Or do you think that it would weaken the NATO alliance? Number two is he used the opportunity, being, coinciding with the first anniversary of his time or tenure as president, to highlight some of the achievements of his stewardship. One of which he talked about investment claims, that nearly 20 million, he has been able to secure nearly $20 trillion in new investment. He talked about, boasted, in fact, about firing 270,000 federal workers, and even said it was good for them because they've now found better roles. He talked about energy triumphs and downplayed some of Europe's policy around, climate and green energy. What's your take on some of these things? How would you assess President Donald Trump's first year in office? Has he delivered on his promises despite his, shenanigans? Has he done well?
I'm not a fan of his. I don't think you are either.
No, I'm just asking questions. He's the president of America. I'm facing the president of my country.
Yes. Let me say that I've already mentioned the absurdity of his claim on NATO. Quite honestly, Greenland is part of NATO. There's acquisition of NATO of Greenland should not strengthen NATO. It will weaken it because you are bullied a member, and I'm not even sure how NATO will respond to that bullying. They have already said they will not agree. They are rallying around Denmark and so on. And he also said that he will not use force. So there's no threat to Greenland. The threat to Greenland is in Donald Trump's imagination. Because Greenland is a member of NATO. And as Dr. Abati has pointed out, Article 5, there's collective security. And therefore, what he needs to do is that if anybody attacks NATO, whether Russia or China, he should be able to come to instigate Article 5, and everybody in NATO will respond appropriately. Now, on his talk about his achievements in 1 year, I mean, you yourself, as a rational human being, knows that no government can achieve that in 1 year. Why is his performance rating 36%? If he's such a wonderful president, it is everything. America has become El Dorado. It has become paradise. Everybody is happy. Those who have mortgages have become rich, and so on and so forth. I mean, that has to be very childish, hallucinatory talk. So, I mean, but that is his style. It's a salesman speech. He's always spent his life selling real estate and so forth. Everything he builds is the best. Everything he touches is the best. Right. He's the greatest president in American history. Okay. He's the one who discovered America, in fact.
Thank you, Professor.
We know that. That is his bombastic style. Okay. It's a man of bombast.
Okay. All right, so the United States tried to purchase Greenland in 1946, and of course we know the defense agreements that followed thereafter, which used Greenland as a launch pad for the defense against the Germans during the war that Denmark was involved in, and the strategic importance that it has played historically. Now, my question to you, I have a number of questions. So the first part of the question is, strategically, we know that NATO contributions have been unmet systematically, consistently over a period of time. It's only recently that we've seen member states starting to pay their dues. The United States has carried the load of NATO. And what Donald Trump said is that he has no assurance that, given the fact that members are reluctant to pay their dues, that if there's an attack on the United States, that NATO would even be capable to come to the support of the United States. So in light of that, do you really think that NATO is able to function or to function beyond the United States? That's the first one. The second is that I took a quote from him. He spoke about what makes a nation strong is strong elections, strong borders, and good media. That's a direct quote from him. Now, I'm just curious, given the context of what we're seeing with globalization, and we're seeing a degrading of strong borders, if I may say that they are trying to bring back. Strong elections, we're seeing a real challenge to democracy recently. Good media, we've also seen attack on the media. Bringing the conversation home to Nigeria, what can we take away from the failures of globalization to strengthen Nigeria? And I'm so sorry to bombard you, but my final question to you is, again, related to NATO and ECOWAS. Many people compare NATO to ECOWAS in that they say Nigeria carries the brunt when it comes to ECOWAS, in a similar way that Donald Trump is saying the United States carries the brunt when it comes to NATO. And we've seen how ECOWAS has become relatively unable to perform its functions, especially with regards to security. Now, do you think that ECOWAS needs to be reshaped? Do you think ECOWAS members need to be encouraged to also make their due contributions in a similar way that Donald Trump is trying to galvanize NATO to resurface and become the strategic cooperative organization that it was intended to from formation?
Thank you very much. Quite a galaxy of questions. The first one is about... the first one is the talk about NATO not being able to meet its obligations. Let me say that any war The NATO has always supported the United States. They went to Iraq. The United States was there. Britain was there, and other NATO countries. They went to Afghanistan. NATO has always been very supportive. So the idea that NATO will not be able to fulfill its obligations, the common defense obligation, has not been proven by history. History has shown that NATO was always willing to go along with the United States to fight. Then, and of course, they also did at the first war after the Second World War, that is the Korean War. NATO members were part of that war. So, but you have to understand two things. One, that the United States was actually, the NATO was actually the idea of the United States to protect itself from the spread of communism. I'm sure Donald Trump has not ever read about the domino theory that led to the US going to war in Vietnam, in Cambodia, in Laos, and other places. The idea that if you allow one domino to fall, the others will fall simultaneously. That is that if you allow communism to take hold in one country, then all the countries of the world will become communist. That was what part of the problem of the doctrine that led to the formation of NATO. That you cannot allow the Soviet Union to get... So by that time, the Soviet Union had taken over Eastern Europe and was poised to move to other parts of Europe that were suffering. So when you talk about NATO, it's an American, its effect, its functions are more in the interest of America to have NATO on its side. That's why the Marshall Plan helped to rehabilitate European economies, and Americans are doing very well in the economy of Europe. Now, when it comes to strong elections, of course, you heard him say that his own election that sent him out of power was rigged. What is a strong election? It's your interpretation. So if American election was rigged, where is the strong election? Why are we not talking about elections? European elections, you hardly ever hear about European elections. Elections in Denmark, in Spain, they go almost unobtrusively elect their people, and democracy is working in those countries. There's no doubt that every country needs strong elections, as strong as you claim to be democratic. And as far as ECOWAS is concerned, the second point I was going to make, sorry, I missed that, about the United States, is that at the end of the day, if the United States is going to fight a war, a global war, it's against Russia or China. You don't need any support for that, because we are going to be fighting a nuclear war. A war that Gorbachev and Reagan in 1989 warned should never be fought, because it can never be won. Everybody will be destroyed, including those of us who are passive onlookers, because there are so many after effects, radiation, blocking the sun's rays because of radioactive nuclear dust. So the idea that NATO will come to the aid of the United States in case of a war is all wishful thinking. So let us understand the purpose of NATO, and let us understand the limits of what it can do. When it comes to ECOWAS, of course, Nigeria is also bearing the brunt of ECOWAS the contribution, 60%. And we saw what happened in ECOMOG. Nigeria went there as in partnership with other countries, but they all disappeared from the scene, and Nigeria had to bear the brunt. Nobody knows how much we spent in ECOMOG. Of course, given our corruption in Nigeria, which is plaguing the fight against Boko Haram as well, we spent billions without accountability.
Prof.
So, first, Nigeria has to put his own house in order. Yes, thank you.
Prof, look, these are straightforward issues. Now, Marco Rubio and Trump himself, they have pointed out that multilateralism is dead. They don't believe in globalism. And that's the whole idea of the US withdrawing from 66 international organizations. That's the whole idea of Trump going to NATO and saying that you guys must increase your defense spending, because America will no longer carry you on your back. So I don't want us to focus on the obvious, what is well reported. Now, I would like to ask you about Nigeria. For the first time, Nigeria has what they call the Nigeria House in Davos, where all the countries meet. And Nigeria, the ministers have been doing a good job with the private sector to sell Nigeria, to say Nigeria is open for business. Now, how effective do you think that will be in this context of America first and, resort to provincialism by the various countries. Wale Edun, the Minister for Finance, was just saying only yesterday, that Nigeria is not going to borrow more. We're going to be very creative with growth and all of that. Meanwhile, we have 23.85 trillion naira deficit in 2026 budget. And the private sector is saying, no, with that, there's no way we will not do a lot more domestic borrowing, and we will crowd out the private sector. So where is Nigeria in all of this? Obviously, nobody considers us important internationally, but Nigeria is saying we are here. Nigeria House is here.
Yes. Well, a country is as good as its management. It's how you manage your country that determines how people see you. Sometimes we deceive ourselves that the things that we do here, nobody knows about it. We are like the ostrich that has his head in the sand, but his whole body is showing to the world. The Nigerian House is good symbolism of participation and a venue for people who want to know about Nigeria to come and find out information, investors, and so on. That's his whole purpose. But I don't know how effective. You don't talk about effectiveness except in quantitative terms. You have to be able to say, before we opened the house, we had so much inquiries about our investment, and we had so much foreign direct investment after. We probably next year we should be able to be talking about the effect, the positive or negative effect of the Nigerian House. Investment is a function of how you run your economy. Nigeria is doing well right now in terms of global ratings. And therefore, that shows that something right is being done. But we are not there yet. And when you talk about borrowing and deficits and so on, these are part. There's no country in the world that does not have a huge deficit. That is part of businesses. When you talk about somebody like Dangote, he has $13 billion as credited to him as his investment. But I'm sure he probably doesn't have $1 million in his account. All are tied to borrowings and so on that he continually services. So I don't think we should be unduly worried about Nigeria's debt. We will continue to run deficit and fund it through borrowing, and it goes on and on forever and ever. It's a never-ending project of borrowing, servicing. What is important is that when we do borrow, when we promise to do things, we do it. I mean, there's a case going on about Mambila project. That's a scandal. We are talking about 6 billion. The projects have not been built. I don't think how much has been committed to visibility study, to professionals. You spend about billions on those things and nothing happens. And you have borrowed the money. Although in this case, the money was not borrowed. It was supposed to be built and operate. But we have paid a lot of money to get to that stage. So it is how you manage your country. It is effective management. And our country, the most critical problem that we have today is corruption. I mean, I was reading only yesterday that there are 21 former governors in the Senate, and they are still getting pension and gratuity. Some of them have 3 cars every 2 years, 2 houses, one in Abuja, one in Lagos, and so on. Scandalous. Those scandals have to be addressed. You cannot have leaders who continue to be buccaneers, who are pirates, just stealing our common patrimony. And you cannot build a country. So when you say you are in debt and half of that is pocketed by individuals, that is not fair. And our people must rise up against that.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, aside from corruption...
That sounds like incitement. Prof, when you say our people must rise up against that.
Yes.
It's an incitement, Prof.
Well, we must rise up. I'm not talking. Rise up means that we must find a way
up intellectually
of correcting it. It doesn't mean revolution.
Yeah. All right, we don't have to rise up on the streets. Yes.
The paper is mightier than the sword, but the pen is mightier than the sword. Not against corrupt people. Corrupt people don't respect the pen.
All right, very quickly, sir, because we're almost out of time. Because you talk about corruption being the biggest challenge that Nigeria faces. One of the things that Minister Yusu Tuga addressed at Davos was the issue of insecurity. In fact, in his speech to assure potential investors, he said that they shouldn't judge Nigeria's prospects through the prism of isolated security incidents. Do you agree with him that these are, in terms of trying to market Nigeria to the rest of the world, or which should come first? Should we also, at home, assiduously look at addressing some of the insecurity challenges so that investors can feel confident enough to bring their resources back home?
Yes. Yes, I think, of course, we have to address insecurity in Nigeria. It's cost us so much. There are many people who cannot go to their farms. It's cost us in agricultural production, in employment, in investment. How many people can invest in the Northwest? How many people can invest in the Northeast? If you are a man of sound mind, will you have millions and say, I want to go and invest in Maiduguri? Well, you are not sure that your factory will not be blown up. So we need to address this insecurity problem, and I'm happy that something is being done. I was reading the speech by the GOC in charge of the operational commander in the Northwest that the bandits are on the run. We need them to, they just don't have to be on the run. We need to eliminate them. I hope the same is true of the Northeast with Boko Haram. So we need to address the insecurity. And what is happening, it was an American general that brought out the idea of surge. You need to flood the place with soldiers, that every inch of the place for a short period of time. We need a surge of deployment so that the bandits don't have any space to move. So once we solve the problem, insecurity problem, people will be favorably disposed to come to our country. We must not deceive ourselves that it's a one-sided view of things that people are hearing. If you hear that there's some little riot in Ketu, you will not leave your house. I mean, because you don't want to take that. Investors are not, they are not casino players. They are people who look at their money very harshly, invest it, and want to get results from it. They are not the one gambling. They are not gamblers. So I think we hope that the Nigerian government will address the problem of insecurity more conscientiously this year and make sure that we get rid of these bandits and these terrorists.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Otubanjo, for joining us on the Morning Show.